The range is going to be somewhere between 70 and 85%. The reason I first started saying 70, 75, I brought it up to 85. That's not a big leap to go from 75 to 85. By the time you get to the end of the second quarter of 2021, namely May, June, July, August, you very likely could have overwhelming majority of the people vaccinated, which means you'd have herd immunity. Herd immunity is that when you have enough people who've either been infected and or vaccinated and protected, that there's enough protection in the community that the virus doesn't have the capability of freely being transmitted from an individual to individual. You kind of have the herd protection as an umbrella. We're not there yet. That's not a fundamental strategy that we're using. That would allow you to safely get people back to school in the fall, to safely get people back to the kinds of works that would otherwise be difficult as you get to the middle and end of the summer. So it's going to start in April, and it's going to go right through the end of the second quarter of 2021. These vaccines work well against this virus, including the Delta variant. They're really quite impressive. I mean, a 94.5% efficacy. Certainly breakthrough infections. Breakthrough infections mean you have been vaccinated, but you still get infected. But the critical point is that I think 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 9 of them had no symptoms at all, which means it is very likely that the level of virus in their nasopharynx is low and they won't transmit it. When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected, whether they're outdoors or indoors. That's the bottom line of that, to get people to appreciate you get vaccinated and you're really quite safe from getting infected. Even if you do get a breakthrough infection when you're vaccinated, the chances of your transmitting it to someone else is exceedingly low. If you do get infected, the chances are that you're going to be without symptoms, and the chances are very likely that you'll not be able to transmit it to other people. The fact that we know now that these vaccines are highly, highly effective, they're really, really good against variants. So the issue with a person who is vaccinated, who gets infected, the level of virus in the nasopharynx of that person is relatively equivalent to that of an unvaccinated person, which means there's a mechanism to say that that person very well might be able to transmit it. And in fact, we have documented cases where a vaccinated infected person did transmit. The level of virus in the nasopharynx of a person who's vaccinated and infected is the same level as the level of virus in the nasopharynx of an unvaccinated person. So you can make a reasonable assumption that they can be equivalent in how they transmit. We are seeing that the ability of individuals who are infected through breakthrough infections, namely vaccinated people who ultimately get infected, that they are generally without symptoms or minimally symptomatic. However, it is clear that they are capable of transmitting the infection to uninfected individuals. And the data that they reported indicates that if you look at the level of virus in the nasopharynx of a person who's vaccinated and has a breakthrough infection, and compare that to the level of virus in the nasopharynx of an unvaccinated person who's infected, they're essentially equivalent, which would go along and underscore the fact that vaccinated people who do have a breakthrough infection are clearly capable of transmitting the infection to an uninfected person. We're starting to see waning immunity against infection and waning immunity in the beginning aspect against hospitalization. And if you look at Israel, which has always been a month to a month and a half ahead of us in the dynamics of the outbreak, in their vaccine response, and in every other element of the outbreak, they are seeing a waning of immunity, not only against infection, but against hospitalizations and to some extent death, which is starting to now
involve all age groups. It isn't just the elderly. So if one looks back at this, one can say, do you know, it isn't as if a booster is a bonus, but a booster might actually be an essential part of the primary regimen that people should have.